stuff there, so you don't have to write down too much. But this tripod, again, as I said, I've had it since I was 17 years old. I'm going to show you why it's so important. When people think of tripods, they think of a ball and chain. Everybody thinks that this is the most uncomfortable, horrible way to work. But the reason they think that is they're thinking like this, you know, the whole pull the legs out. By the time you get 3 legs out, you've got kids everywhere, right? So what I want to show you this is this quick release. This is the only tripod that has this. There are 3 levers here. I'm using these fingers, an L and a thumb, and it gives me the ability to move mighty, mighty fast. And I love watching your faces when I do that. Isn't that cool? I should have said, have the camera on them. That's usually a jaw dropper for people. Because I'm in boots and I don't normally shoot in this attire, in fact, I don't normally wear shoes, so that would be the farm life. But as you can see, I have the ability to go down to the ground, and typically I work this fast. I can go everywhere. Now, this is a brand new out-of-the-box tripod. Give it a week and these legs are super fluid, but you'll see when I shoot, I use my legs all the time. I'm like a Barbie doll here. Again, this is the key. These releases, I can release all 3 legs at one time. I can also release 1 leg at a time. So there's no other tripod that can do that. Now everybody is going to go, that's awesome, I want it, and then they're going to say, how heavy is it? Because I know these ladies here are thinking that. I've shot this for 24 years. I go all over the world just like this. Now, since there are hundreds of us out there, if we contact Manfrotto, they actually call this the Sandy Puts tripod at Manfrotto. I'm trying to get them to build a chick version, like a little version. So I want all of you to flood Manfrotto's Facebook page and tell them you want the small 6B, right? 058B, I'm sorry. Because this is not that heavy, and I would absolutely not go anywhere without it, but it would be nice if we could get a slightly lighter one. The head that I'm using is a pistol grip. It's a Manfrotto 222. This does give me the ability to go horizontal and vertical very quickly. I typically use a 70 to 200, so I can go horizontally and vertically here. But if I'm using another lens, a prime lens, I have that as an option as well. So this is my baby, and I go everywhere with it. As I said, stability is critical to me. If you're going to want to work as fast as I shoot, you have to work from a stable source. And you'll see why as I'm shooting. In fact, watch when I'm photographing live sessions tomorrow. Very rarely will you ever see me behind the camera like this. I almost do all of my shooting from this side of the camera. I pre-compose, and then I talk to my subjects. I tickle them, I play with them. There's a lot of control I have there. Oh, you're gonna love that one. There's no light on you. But I have that control. And so you'll see, I'm never behind the camera. I'll then recompose, be back here. Okay, look right here. Okay, we got you right there. This gives me the ability to never lose eye contact with the child. We're dealing with babies this time. I hope to come back someday and do children, but that is important with a child, because if you've got them locked on, they're not thinking about anything but you. So I cannot be back here, and I cannot be doing this all the time. So stability is critical. Now, I would say that in a normal session, I spend about 80% of my time using a stable source, a tripod or a camera stand. Always about 20% of my time. This is a QRP, a quick release plate. I'm going to pop it off, and I'm going to run around and catch those photojournalistic style, fun, chasing the baby, running around, crazy shots. That's my playtime, but I'm going to in the first 80% of the time, I'm going to get the sellable shots. They're all going to be in focus. They're all, well, we hope they are, and I'm going to have that control. I'm not going to lose the momentum. One of the things I promised you today was to teach you how to do a newborn session in 20 minutes with phenomenally sellable images. And again, I couldn't do it without this. When I watch photographers shooting, this is obviously, the most popular lens in our industry, 70 to 200, great compression. When I see photographers holding this, working with a small child, they're holding it in one hand, trying to tickle the child, and I'm watching their hand go like this. I know they're having focus issues for sure. There's no way you can do that. I struggle to hold that camera. And to interact with a child and handhold a camera is nearly impossible. So I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying that I'm right, you're wrong. If you never touch a tripod, it's not going to hurt my feelings at all. I'm saying that to have the speed and the flexibility and to do what I do, I couldn't do it without this. Other tools, camera strap. I do not shoot with a camera strap in the studio because I'm tethered. I will have one on because we're going to have a ladder tomorrow and I'll be above a baby. Typically, I have a very sturdy stand that could not tip over. I'll have a strap on. Certainly safety is always our primary, so It is smarter if you're going to be holding an 8-pound camera over a child to probably have something like this. They are a nuisance to me, I'm not going to lie. That's why I use something else, but I would not, if you see me doing it, please don't judge me, okay? Safety is, I've never dropped a camera on anyone's face yet, and I don't intend to. A couple other things. Pocket Wizards. This is from the Mac group. We use Pocket Wizards as our receivers and transmitters. We just have our traditional, the Pocket Wizard Plus 2s. We also have the newer versions that we're able to do high-speed sync and some other fun things with, which we won't be touching this time. So Pocket Wizards are what are remotely firing the lights. And I know some of this is very elementary, but you have to understand there are people out there who literally don't know what a receiver and a transmitter is. And I remember the first time somebody told me, I had been with a cord for probably 6 years. So this fires the light. There's one on the camera, and of course there's one on the light, receiving and transmitting that information. It does make things a whole lot easier when you're dealing with them. Let's see what else. In addition to that, might as well stay on the Mac group here. With the Mac group, we have the Sekonic. In the Mac group, Pocket Wizards and Sekonic brands are both with the Mac group. I've had a meter since the day I was born as a photographer, and I will die with a meter in my hand. I did go through the digital, they call it revolution, I call it destruction, where we all gave up our meters and said, oh, I don't need a meter, just look at the back of the camera, it looks good. You have to understand, when shooting with studio strobes, that's not an option. You cannot, I mean, you can keep shooting and trying to guesstimate and reading a histogram, but I don't have that much time with kids. I can't keep sorry, ta-da. We're going to switch these two in a second. I can't keep looking at the back of my camera and hoping that once I get it right, that child's going to, I probably missed every opportunity that any of you got it this time. Cool. So we're going to talk about lights and light placements. Before I end, one last thing, because this is awesome. Our goal is always to show you cool tools. So hang the meter for a second. This is also Manfrotto. In our studio, this is the light stand we use. They call this, what is the number on this one? This is 231B. It's also at sandyputch.com gear page, 231B. But what I want you to see is this. I can go all the way to the floor. I work with kids. I can go all the way to the floor, all the way up to the ceiling in 1/10 of a second. I think of camera stands just like you think of tripods. I don't want to be doing this. My child's halfway out the universe by then. So most of my work is on the floor. I don't want to be messing around on the floor. And when I can actually have the softbox touching the ground, that's pretty awesome. If you don't have room for this, there are smaller versions of this. Again, these are luxury items that over time you start to go, hey, you know what? It'd be worth doing an extra job to get one of those because it would save me lots of time that I could go home and be with my family. So this is a Manfrotto stand. We're working with Photogenics today, Photogenics Studio Strobes. These are 1250s, I believe. We have both 1250s. This is pretty much the staple of my studio when it comes to studio strobe lighting. I use equal amounts of studio strobe and continuous light. Tomorrow, I'm going to showcase the Westcott's lights. Love my Westcotts, love my Photogenics for different reasons. I'm a huge, I just need water, if that's okay. I love natural lights. We showed you earlier, I cut windows out of my building. I literally cut the walls down, things, to get that natural light in there. And so I use continuous light in my studio as an accent light to the natural light, just to give me separators and kickers. If I were in a tiny dark space, I would use continuous light as my main light, which would work as well. But people always say, which one's better? There's no answer there because it's impossible. I need them both. You have to decide. If you can only have one, you have to decide what the final outcome is. Continuous light is wonderful, but there's issues with shutter speeds and ISOs and apertures. Because obviously there's only a certain amount of light you can get out of them. So if you have a very busy toddler that's running around like crazy, continuous light, there is a risk that you're going to have some focus issues unless you bump that ISO so high and out of my comfort zone. So with busy little children, typically the 1-year-old, we're probably going to spend a lot of time with studio strobes. Studio strobes can stop motion at a 60th of a second. That's what I'm looking for. I need to lock them down. I need to get that shot. I need it to be in focus, and I need it to be well lit. So there are many reasons to go back and forth between the two, and I literally, every single session that comes in, I would say 40% is studio strobes and maybe 60% is continuous with natural light combination. They look totally different. They feel totally different. Another reason that I like these lights for what we're about to do is the control. I work with soft boxes and I work with soft boxes and strip lights to do this type of work. Now I want to explain this setup real quick because in my studio, this is actually a pretty traditional setup here. Anybody, family, children, seniors, whatever, comes in here, you're probably going to see a 3x4 soft box as my main light. You're going to see a 3x4 reflector. This is a super silver reflector. And again, this is all on my website. You're going to see a super, this is my favorite, by the way. These reflectors are phenomenal for controlling light. We use them mainly outside because they have the ability to control, like you can lock things down as opposed to those big wobbly ones that the wind blows away. So this is great. Sunbounce makes an incredible one. They're a great company. So that's one that I would recommend. So this is 3x4 reflector. This is Larson's 3x4 softbox. And this also is a Larson's 14x48, I believe. Yes, 14x48. This is my standard studio setup. I also want to make sure that you note that these are egg crates. This is my favorite light modifier when it comes to studio strobes. Egg crates create control. They tighten up the light space. It's very light in here, so it's hard for you to see this, but you can imagine, you can just see it with your eyes visually. When we open that up, the light broadens. By using egg crates, we compress it down. Our lights, and we're going to go through these images, we are notorious for what we call a kicker light, a separator, the light that separates the body, as you can see, off of the background. That is what separates an amateur from a professional, the use of light, the knowledge of how to use that light. So I'm just fanatic about these kickers. Now, this is standard setup, and if I were doing like a family portrait, we might have, so you can pull that over here real quick since we might not get to talk about it tomorrow. We may have a third light, just bring it in all the way in. We may, if this were a family portrait, we might have a background light. This is a 1250. I would probably use a 625, which is about half the power. And these are this is a honeycomb grid. And this is the same thing. You understand it's controlling the light, and it's actually creating the vignette. And I'm going to go through this in slides and talk to you about it. This I would use to separate the subject from the background. So these are the light sources that I would usually use. Now what we're doing today is we're going to do a Madonna portrait, a mother baby. Now we're using our special baby here. And by the way, on break I was trying to turn its head, and I didn't realize people were watching up there, and I think they were horrified. So I was like, it doesn't have a turnable head, so it's going to make this a little challenging. But it's not a real baby. Make sure everybody knows that. So this is our little subject, and we're going to use Karen out of the audience as our model. Karen, this is, I'm going to talk frankly. Karen has just had a baby, by the way, but she looks fantastic. But I want to talk a little bit about moms who have just had babies. In sessions, in fact, we were talking about this on the break. In this session, this is our Madonna session. Remember the one I said that makes you the most money, that's the highest seller? I want to make sure you guys get this right. In those sessions, we do want mom and dad to be present. And in the consultation, we do give them all the information on clothing and what to wear and how to look and how much makeup. Now, the question I always get is, what if they don't want to? And I always say they don't have an option. It's not optional. If they come in, they've had the consultation, and it says in the notes, mom does not want to be photographed. As soon as she comes in, I will talk to her about being photographed, even though she's made it clear she doesn't want to, because I can talk to the client and explain to them that, I know you just had a baby. I know that you're not feeling totally comfortable about where you are yet, but I want you to keep in mind, in this series, this is not about you. You are literally a prop to me. Your hands might show, you might get a little bit of your lips showing, maybe a little bit of your cheek, but really and truly you're just a prop. And I'll be very honest with you. If I don't use you as a prop, I'm going to have half of the images that I can offer you with. And the truth is, if I use you and you love it, great. And if you don't, you certainly don't have to buy anything. So if you'll allow me to do this, two things. Number one, you're going to have a lot more choice. And number two, your baby is going to be more comfortable in your arms and is going to give me a longer session. So that's something that I want you to think about. If you're really, truly not comfortable, we won't do it. But if you trust me, then let me give this a try. And if it doesn't work, you're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't purchase. That word was really important. I said, if you trust me, because they already trust you. They came to you. They hired you, so to speak. They already trust you, but you've now acknowledged that you're going to take care of them. So let's talk a little bit about the choice of not using that that background light. When we're dealing with moms who have just had babies, what's their number one concern? Their weight, correct? Their body, how much weight they're carrying. Especially on, we're talking a 10-day-old baby. Nobody likes the way they look. We're puffy, we're carrying water, and I know that. And my goal is not to humiliate people. And frankly, if you do that, you don't sell a lot of nice portraits anyway. So that doesn't work. So the first thing you have to account for is the body. I don't care. One out of every 100 women walks in and I go, you just had a baby? Most of them, it's pretty clear they've had a baby. So the first thing I want you to think about is the setup. Because normally we use light to add and create dimension, and we're going to cover that in slides later. But I want you to think about her body. What is the best choice of background for somebody that's carrying weight? Black, a dark background. What is the best choice of clothing for somebody that's carrying weight? Black, a dark clothing. Black on black subtracts and takes away. So in this case, I don't want this light because I don't need to separate her. I don't want to create any shaping around here. I want to focus. My goal is this right here. It's all about mom and baby, and that is that's my entire target right there. So we're going to go with a dark background. Now this background is by Westcott, and tomorrow we're going to be shooting with Westcott continuous lights. They've got some gorgeous backgrounds that you can check out as well. It's not pitch black. They actually have this in pitch black. I wish I would have brought that one. But keep in mind that using light, we're going to pull the lights off of the background. It's going to be pretty close to black. Unless I key this light in, we're not going to see much of that background. So we can even take a background like this and make it black. Now, real quickly, I'm going to have Brendan help me out and switch these two, because I said this is the typical setup in my studio. I'm going to show you a Madonna portrait setup. Remember, we talked about weight being the biggest issue? So typically, not always, but typically, I'm going to switch the two of these. Now, I usually don't manually switch it. I push this one back and this one forward because I don't want to waste a lot of time. But in this case, we've got cords that are lined up the way they need to be. So what we're talking about here, all right, we're back together here. Now, I'm going to re-meter because we didn't get to the meter yet. Now we're going to switch that horizontal. All right, good deal. So in my studio, if I were to push my lights back real quick, now what I have here is a big light flooding this way and a small light here. So my main light just became a very small light source. What I'm actually doing is cheating, because I'm going to bring this up and in. And now what I'm going to do is take my reflector and go like this. And what did I just do? What is that? What is this now? Strip light. Thank you. It's a strip light. So I just cheated, didn't I? I could put a new strip light on there, but I have minutes with children, not hours. So that's my cheat. I can block that light. I now have two tiny light sources. What are tiny light sources? They're direct lighting, right? So I can now control how much light is actually hitting the subject. I can hide all of the weight issues that may potentially be a problem. So we're going to meter these out. Now, typically in my studio, and I say typically because I like to think that I'm creative and don't set it to F8 and go, but to be honest, in studio strobes, we set it to F8 and go. Because you know why? 24 years ago, a photographer said, set it to F8 and go, and I believed him. So that's what I do. F8 is obviously a good range for exposure and focus. I'm sorry, not exposure, for focus, working with any subject. So remember, that studio strobe only. If we go to continuous light, I have to meter to the lights, and it totally changes. Using a Sekonic meter, this is the 358, the L358 meter. Like I said, I will die with a meter in my hand. You will never prove to me that you should not meter out. Do you know why? Because you teach yourself how to see light. With a meter, what happens is after so many years of clicking that, especially with natural light, when you click it and you go, I knew that was going to be F8, pretty soon you become a human meter. So I literally, after this many years, can walk in any room and I can tell you exactly what ISO and exposure, and I can make adjustments if I need to bump my ISO and change my aperture because I've played with this my whole life. My brain has become that meter. So visually seeing it is far better than going, that looks pretty good. I can fix it in Photoshop, and it's much, much better to train your brain that way. So my main light is going to be set, and we need to bring this one up now since we switched them. Because what's happened is it was at F8, it's blocked a little bit of the light with the grids. So we're going to bring that up just a tiny bit. And I'm at 1/25. I'm going to go ahead and I'll shoot at 1/25. Just make sure I switch over. Okay, down just a hair. And another hair, sorry. Whew. Okay, we're going to be just at a clean F8 here as our main light. That's much better. Okay, we're at F8 as our main light. Our kicker or separator light, it's going to be too hot because you switched it, I bet, we've got to switch it to 5/6. So our main light is F8. Our kicker light is 1 stop less at 5/6, and that's pretty standard, little tiny bit, a tenth of a stop. Okay, a little bit up, sorry, went too far. All right, so we are 5/6 and F8. 1 stop less, and that's pretty traditional with the work that I'm going to do. I want to separate the body, but I don't want to blow her up by no means. Now, usually she's in dark clothing, which helps as well. I selected you because you had long sleeves. Again, these are all things you're going to think about when you're working with a mom who's just had a baby. We don't want to see arms. We don't want to see necks. Turtlenecks used to be popular, not as popular now, but we're going to try to find ways to work around that. All right, I think we're good to go. The last thing I do want to mention is we do color balance our cameras before we shoot. You already did that, correct? So we always color balance. We're fanatics about that. We want perfect captures before they go to Photoshop so that we just have to start working on the artistic elements. So we use this as a PhotoVision disc. And we use PhotoVision disc and gray balance our cameras, and we're good to go. So I think that's it. We're going to go through the 5 poses. Now, before I would normally do this in a studio environment, we would have had a whole conversation. We're going to give you that conversation when we go back and sit down. So we're just jumping right in. As far as you're concerned, we've had all that, and we're going to sit down. Good. Huh? You're perfect. All right, and that stool, I think, is pneumatic. I think it can go down. There you go, my dear, just so you can be a little more comfortable. Swing your knees this way. A couple things about lighting. These are old school rules. Any photography book will probably tell you. In an old school portraiture, your tummy goes away from the light. I'm going to turn you that way. Your nose goes back towards the light. What that is doing is sculpting the body. In fact, you can kind of see it with me. Tummy away, nose towards the light. Now my main light is coming here, and that's slimming my body. If we break that rule, tummy towards the light, nose away from the light, I'm now what's called broad lighting my body, correct? Now I'm lighting my entire body. I look wider, I look fatter, I look heavier, and I'm broad lighting my face. It looks wider and brighter. So we're now going to go back to tummy away, nose towards. There's shadow on the body, therefore slimming the body, and especially with Madonna portraits, this is important. So tummy away, nose towards. It's a very, very simple rule. We're going to go through the 5 poses, and we're going to show you exactly how we take a mom through this series. Not going to photograph as much today. We're kind of doing this backwards, so I'll give you the 10-second version. One of the keys with this series is keeping the baby away from mom. Everybody knows what happens when you do this with a baby. They're going to want to eat, correct? Mm-hmm. It is a chemical reaction. Babies smell their mom. It's part of how they grow, is they smell mom, and that gets their tummies growling, and mom starts to produce, and all of a sudden it's time to stop and nurse. So I don't want the babies facing into mom as little as possible. So these 5 poses were created to take us through this series very quickly, keeping baby facing out from mom as long as possible. Now, in my studio, we actually do have dolls. And we have a doll called the Ugly Baby, which we'll show you later. It's the ugliest doll you've ever seen. And we use it to actually teach parents how to do this. We grab the doll, they hold their baby, and we explain to them, okay, this is the first pose I want you to do. Pose number 1 we call the nest. And you do not have to take notes on this because we're going to cover all of it. And it's in the book you're going to get for free, the catalog you're going to get for free. This is it. I really want you to focus and pay attention on this. Pose number 1 is called the nest. Now, all of these poses require you as a photographer to assist moving the baby. So I will go to mom and I'll tell her, I'll say, okay, the first number pose, and remember, I have a doll, not her baby. I'll say the first number pose. My goal is the baby's cheek near your chin, and the legs have to be straight out. When I started photography, like most people, this was my Madonna portrait back then. And of course, there's a problem here, and that's the distance between baby and mom. So my first fix for that was to do this. Hold the baby up by your face. Well, of course, what happens when you do that? You block those shoulders and you become like a football player here. So that didn't work. So this is truly an evolution of years and years of me trying to figure this out. In fact, these 5 poses, I taught a 5-day in-studio workshop. And I started doing this, and a student turned to me and they said, is this a formula you have? Do you have this written down? And I looked at her and laughed at it. I said, no, it's not a formula, because it kind of made me feel like a cookie cutter photographer. And as I was shooting, I realized I do the exact same thing when I do this every time. And I